Under Center podcast. We're fortunate enough to have the host on Locked On Titans podcast, Tyler Rowland, joining us. Follow him at Tic Tac Titans. Tyler, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. I'm so excited for the football season to kick off. Been waiting so long for this. I'm truly a football junkie, so it's my favorite time of year. The fall weather, the football coming back. I could not be more excited.
Yeah, it's crazy how football owns this country, and we feel the same way that you feel. We've waited. We've talked ad nauseum about the draft and then free agency and then training camp. So now it's great, like you said, to get into some football. I guess I want to jump in, particularly with both of these teams you have a second-year quarterback. We have a rookie quarterback, and start right there with the quarterbacks. And you have new defensive coordinator Denard Wilson taking over this 3-4 scheme. What are the expectations and how you're going to try to stop the Bears? And also, of course, Caleb Williams, with not a lot of tape on what Caleb does in this Shane Waldron system. What will be the angles that you think the defense are going to try to take to slow this rookie quarterback down?
Well, I think it's interesting because neither team really has a lot of tape out there. We don't know exactly what we're going to get from Denard Wilson, the new defensive coordinator for the Titans. Brian Callahan came from the Cincinnati system, but I think it would be a fool's errand to expect exactly what you got in Cincinnati. He's a guy who tailors the offense to his quarterback. So both teams with Caleb Williams on offense and then the Titan sides, we don't know what we're going to get. It makes the game really intriguing. But from a defensive standpoint, for me, my number one focus for the Titans is to make sure that they have a disciplined pass rush. You cannot allow Caleb Williams to get outside the pocket because that is what he's done his entire life. He's been an off-schedule playmaker, really great with that sandlot ball. We saw it in the preseason, getting out of the pocket, making those side body flip throws down the field. That is where he feels most comfortable. If I'm the Titans, I want to make sure that I'm disciplined in my pass rush on the edge. Do not allow him out the back door. Do not allow easy escape hatches, and make Caleb Williams sit in the pocket and dice up an NFL defense, which he has never had to do before. He's been a better athlete than most guys. I think if the Titans can keep him inside the pocket and not let him get to what he's comfortable with, which is making plays outside, and that puts pressure on your defensive backs, him in the pocket with one of my favorite terms is the mush rush. You got to kind of mush rush a little bit. You can't be overly aggressive off the edge because if you do, you're going to let him out and then you're in trouble. So keep him in the pocket and make those 10, 12 play drives where he takes what the defense gives him and he has to stay patient. It's hard for rookie quarterbacks to do that. And that's why number one picks and rookie quarterbacks struggle so much in their debuts historically is because they're just not used to what you have to do in the NFL. So the number one thing for me on the Titans defense is just making sure that you keep Caleb Williams in the pocket, make him a pocket passer, and see if he can beat you that way.
From the other side, Will Levis, had an up and down rookie year with the Titans. What have you seen in terms of Will Levis developing in year two? And what are the expectations for him this season leading the Titans?
Well, I think the expectation isn't anything singular. It's not like you got to hit 4,000 passing yards or you got to throw 30 touchdowns or anything. The arrow just needs to be pointing up. The Titans need to know that Levis is the guy. There can be no uncertainty after the year. Right now, is he the guy? Is he not the guy? I think he's the guy, but you can't know for certain. We need to know for certain after this season that Will Levis is the guy for the Titans. That's like the number one goal for me for the team on the whole year is knowing that you got the quarterback to build around. I think the Bears are in a similar situation. Of course, you'd love to win as many games as possible, but the real goal here is to know, hey, this is our quarterback to build around. So for Will Levis, though, I just want to see progress in the small stuff. Like, we know that he's got the cannon arm. He can throw those deep shots off play action and throw it past the defense. But like I was talking about with Caleb Williams, can he take the 5-yard on 2nd and 10 and make sure he's ahead of the chains? Can he dump off to the check down on 1st and 10 and make sure that it's not a negative play and you're staring at 2nd 10 in the face? He has to find a way to live underneath and then take those shots when they're available, but you're not going to live off those. We saw the Titans offense try to live off that last year. And it's just, it's like eating a 28-ounce steak for dinner every night. Like, no, you got to mix in the salads in there as well, my friends. You can't just live off that. So I want to see Will Levis really have good situational awareness and then be accurate underneath and not feel like he's got to play hero ball and chuck the ball down the field nonstop. So if he could do those things, that's going to help him big time throughout the season. But I think that's going to help him a ton in this game against the Bears as well.
For everybody that's listening or watching with us right now, Tyler is gifted when it comes to the X's and O's. Tyler, is there anything you've gleaned from watching the past actions of Shane Waldron as an offensive coordinator and how Jeffrey Simmons, L'Jarius Sneed, and Quadre Diggs on the back end, of course, Simmons in the front, are going to try to attack what Caleb is going to do. You've mentioned, of course, the mush rush. And for anybody who doesn't know that, like a mushroom head contain the outsides right there, if you don't know. Right. But is there anything else you think offensively Shane Waldron is going to do to attack that defense? I guess is the best way for me to put that question.
Well, I think Shane Waldron was really good at scheming up play action passes for Geno Smith. So I think the best way that you can help your young quarterback in Caleb Williams is to run the football and then give him play action shots. And not only is that a smart move for them, but the Titans defense, in my opinion, is susceptible over the middle of the field. You have a guy like Kenneth Murray at linebacker, a guy like Ernest Jones, who the Titans just traded for at linebacker. Their other starting linebacker right now, who I think gets replaced by Ernest Jones eventually, but for right now, Jack Gibbons, who is an undrafted free agent from a couple of years ago. None of those guys are any good in coverage over the middle of the field. I mean, Kenneth Murray has been an outright disaster in his first 4 years over the middle of the field in coverage. Gibbons is a smart player and a physical player, but he's a slow player, which makes him struggle in pass coverage as well. I know that Quandre Diggs has been a good player for Seattle, Pro Bowl 3 out of the last 4 years, but the reality is he did lose a little bit of a step last year. So I am a bit concerned about the Titans linebackers and the Titans safeties over the middle of the field and pass coverage. So if you can hit some play action passes off the run game and give Caleb Williams easy throws over the middle and take advantage of the Titans' worst pass coverage guys, I think that's going to, spell success for Chicago. Hopefully the Titans can stop the run from my perspective, and put Caleb Williams in third and long situations where they can get to some of those blitz pressures and they can get some of that interior rush coming into Caleb Williams' face and forcing him to move up by staying contained on the outside. It's all connected, obviously. But yeah, I would be looking for Shane Waldron to really hit some play action passes, but that's only going to be max effectiveness if they run the ball as well. But over the middle of the field, Waldron should be looking to take advantage there.
Now, Titans' identity is going to radically shift this year. Derrick Henry has been the face of that franchise for a long, long time. He's out over to Baltimore, and in is Tony Pollard to work with Tyjae Spears. So I guess this is a multi-parter. One is, how do the Titans go about reestablishing an identity, forming a new identity? What do you think that will be? And then is there something that the Titans believe they have or see in Tony Pollard that makes them confident he can be the guy in a way that he wasn't the guy for the Cowboys last season?
Well, I think schematically speaking, to answer the first question, the Titans are just going to be more varied this year. Throughout most of the Derrick Henry era, it was wide zone. They ran inside zone runs, which is more about the offensive line blocking a spot than it is blocking a man, and that takes advantage of agile, athletic offensive linemen as well. Well, the Titans shifted that this year. They went with heavier offensive linemen. Last year, the Titans were in the bottom 5 in terms of overall weight of their starting offensive line. This year, they're in the top half of the NFL. I think they're 12th overall in terms of just weight and size on the offensive line. You bring in Bill Callahan with Brian Callahan, and Bill Callahan's run game has always been varied. There's a little bit of mid zone. There's a little bit of outside zone, of course, but they also mix in a lot of power and they mix in a lot of pin pull stuff as well. So I think whereas in the past with Derrick Henry and Ryan Tannehill and the Titans, they did what they did well, and they did that. They did the outside zone. They did the play action off of it, and that's how they operated. Well, once the team got a little bit worse and other teams around the NFL kind of realized, hey, you're doing only these things. Well, the Titans couldn't run the ball because their offensive line wasn't good, and that makes the play action less effective. And the Titans didn't have an answer for when teams would press on the line of scrimmage, when teams would stack the box and bring pressure off the edges right off the snap. The Titans had no answers. Brian Callahan is going to have the answers to all of the questions that the Titans are going to face. He's just a much more gifted offensive mind than the Titans have had in the building since they let Arthur Smith go. So I think the scheme is going to be way more varied, where you got, a heavy dose of outside zone with Derrick Henry. Now, again, you're going to get gap runs. You're going to get pin pull. You're going to get some zone as well. So it's going to be a mixture of things, which makes the Titans a more difficult offense to stop, because there isn't just one thing you got to stop. Now, for Tony Pollard, I don't think Tony Pollard needs to be the guy, and that's what I'm so excited about. Look, the Derrick Henry experience was fantastic. He's one of the best running backs of my lifetime. No doubt about it. He's a Hall of Famer. I think he'll probably be a first ballot Hall of Famer, at least second year. entry because he just made such an impact, and running backs don't produce the way that they used to. You know what I mean? There are no Walter Paytons in the NFL nowadays. Like, that just doesn't happen. It's all about being a committee. And I think getting away from Derrick Henry, who is a one-trick pony. The trick was incredible. The trick is incredible, but he's a one-trick pony. You know what I mean? He can't play. He doesn't do as well in gap runs and pin pull runs. And he's not a guy who can catch the ball out of the backfield very well. And he can't run a full route tree out of the backfield. And it kind of pigeonholed the Titans at times last year. If he's in the backfield, it limits what they can do. So I think you go out and you get Tony Pollard, who's very similar to Tyjae Spears in skill set. And now the running back in the backfield doesn't tip the defense off as to what you can do. You have your full playbook in front of you, no matter who's in there. So I think that Tony Pollard can go back to his 2022 form with the Cowboys now that he's fully healed from the broken leg. And he looked really good. You look at some of the data, he looked really good at the end of the season last year in terms of like broken tackles per attempt and stuff like that. He was doing a lot better and back to his 2022 ways. He just had a slow start to 2023. So I think that Tony Pollard doesn't have to be the guy. He just has to be one of the guys with Tyjae Spears. And I think if you look at Tyjae Spears and Tony Pollard as one running back instead of two, that's a really, really good running back. So I'm more excited for the fact that they're not going to have one guy that they got to give 20 carries to get the most out of. Both those guys have similar skill sets where you don't need Tony Pollard to be the guy. You don't need Tyjae Spears to be the guy. And that's the way the NFL works now. That is the best way to do it. Instead of having one highly paid bell cow running back, you have a couple of decently paid running backs who can be part of a stable. And I think in Chicago in recent years, that's what they've done. You know, they had Deontay Foreman in there. They draft Roschon Johnson. Khalil Herbert's a good player. So I think you look around the NFL, the smart teams, and Ryan Poles coming from Kansas City, obviously a smart guy. The smart teams know that you don't build around one bell cow back anymore. You got to have a stable of guys. So I'm looking forward to having that approach to offense, a modern approach to offense for this season.
Look, I saw what you try to do, pulling at our heartstrings, mentioning sweetness. All right, but I want to stick with running back. Did you catch me
on that?
I think each of us nodded as you said.
Oh yeah, yeah. You definitely warmed our hearts with that one. Very, very slick of you. Sticking with running backs though, and I want to go historically, and then I want to talk about the Bears running back core, which you just mentioned, and throw Swift in there with them. Mm-hmm. But you mentioned Derrick Henry, of course, and Roll Tide is going to be a Hall of Famer. Where do you place him as far as, and I'm gonna bring the Oilers in here. So this is before all of our times, but Earl Campbell and the great Eddie George, and then with Derrick Henry, how do you rate those guys? And then also your thoughts on the Bears running back core. How well do you think they will play this season? But how well do you think perhaps they will play against this defense with the addition of Swift joining the guys you mentioned as far as Roschon and Khalil Herbert?
Well, I have to be honest. I became a Tennessee Titans fan. I'm 33 years old. So 90s baby. Shout out to my 90s babies out there. But I'm from Ohio, actually. So I'm not from Tennessee. So I've been raised on Ohio State football. And Eddie George coming from Ohio State, winning the Heisman, going to the Tennessee Titans, that was a big reason why I am a Titans fan for the last 25 years. So I say all that to say this. Earl Campbell is at the top to me. He's a legend in the game. When I have discussions about the Titans, I typically just stay with Titans history because at the end of the day, I didn't see any of the Oilers stuff. I'm not speaking on that from a place of knowledge. It would just be reading Google and stuff like that to try to put it together, reading books and stuff. So I have to put Earl Campbell there because of his legendary status. But behind him, I would put Derrick Henry. I think Derrick Henry is a more talented running back than Eddie George. Eddie George was a grinder, man, one of the toughest players in NFL history. He is like, if I had to pick one player to show what the Titans are, it's him and McNair. It's one or the other. You know, they really resemble what the Tennessee Titans are. But Derrick Henry was a better running back than Eddie George. He just was. So I would go Earl Campbell, Derrick Henry, Eddie George, and then Chris Johnson. Chris Johnson was absolutely electric, and that was like during my high school years, so it was very fun to watch that happen. But he didn't have the longevity on the Titans or in the NFL in general for me to put him over those other three guys. Looking at the Bears backfield, I think DeAndre Swift could really have success. I think it would be tough to run into the teeth of the Titans defense with Herbert or Johnson, who are bigger, stronger backs than DeAndre Swift, because Jeffrey Simmons and Tavondre Sweat in the middle, they're going to be hard to move at the end of the day. But you get DeAndre Swift out on the outside. And again, it goes back to my concerns in coverage with the linebackers and safeties. You get DeAndre Swift on a Kenneth Murray. You get DeAndre Swift on a Jack Gibbons, on an Ernest Jones. Swift is going to win that matchup in space every single time almost. Like, Kenneth Murray is a good athlete, but he just doesn't have great zone awareness and feel for where he's out on the field. He's a downhill player. They want to get him downhill and let him attack. Getting him out in space, moving laterally, that's where things get a little wonky. So I think Swift could really have a good day out of the backfield catching passes. And that would, same thing with the Caleb Williams thing I said earlier. He can't hold the ball too long and try to do all this sandlot stuff. You can't let him do it. So if I'm Caleb Williams and the Titans are hemming me in the pocket, I got to take my check down. I got to get it out to my playmaker in space and see if he can get some yards. So I think if they find a way on, and the Titans are going to be a blitzing, aggressive defense this year, I think they might be near the top of the NFL in terms of blitz percentage. So if the Titans are going to do that, well, we're going to hit slip screens and we're going to hit flow screens and we're going to get the ball out into space with blockers in front and use that aggressiveness against you. I always compare it to like judo. I'm not a big martial arts guy, but in judo, you use your opponent's weight against them to flip them and turn them so that you don't have to give out max effort, And that's the way the Bears should approach this of, hey, you're going to come at us full force. I'm going to use your weight against you and flip you over. And then now I'm on top. And you could do that very effectively with DeAndre Swift in the screen game.
I love that. You mentioned shaky safety play in addition to linebacker play. We'd be remiss if we didn't talk about Kevin Byard, who is taking over for Eddie Jackson this year. And I was wondering, for fans, Chicago fans who are still getting to know Kevin Byard and maybe know about the playmaking, but don't know so much about the player, can you give Chicago Bears fans a little primer on here's who Kevin Byard is? Here's what you can expect out of him as the new ball hawking free safety.
So fun fact, Kevin Byard is my favorite Tennessee Titan of all time. I guess a little controversial and like, what do you mean? It's not McNair. It's not Derrick Henry. There's something about Kevin Byard, the way he carries himself. He was so consistent. The way he made plays on defense and got turnovers and interceptions and how that helped this team. I believed in him coming. I wasn't even covering the Titans at the time when he was drafted in 2016, but when he was drafted in the 3rd round out of Middle Tennessee State, I don't know what it was, but I just got this feeling. This guy's it. I called my brother, who's also a Titans fan. I'm like, dude, this safety out of Middle Tennessee, he is going to be a beast. I know it. He's the only Titans jersey that I own. Except for this one hanging up that has my name on it, because you buy enough jerseys for the Titans throughout your life and you get sick of it pretty quick when none of these guys work out. Too many Tyrone Calicos and Chris Brown jerseys for me. But Kevin Byard is a guy at this age, you cannot put him in man coverage against tight ends. He did that a little bit for the Titans during his career where he would be the down safety and he would have man responsibility on tight ends. You cannot do that anymore. I think his foot speed has slipped just a little bit as he gotten into his 30s to where I wouldn't trust him in man coverage. But I know Matt Eberflus is a Tampa 2 guy. He's mixed in a ton of cover 3, though, in recent years to where I wouldn't even call it traditional Tampa 2 anymore. He's varied things. So if you have Kevin Byard in the back end reading the quarterback's eyes, that is where he is at his best. He's an instinctual player, great awareness. So he may lose a little bit of foot speed now that he's in the back half of his career, but he can use his instincts and his film study and his preparation. He had a pick 6 against the Rams in 2021 on Sunday Night Football. Half the Titans team was out, and he took a pick 6 back to put the Titans up like 3 touchdowns on the Rams early. And it was like, whoa, but he's talked about that play and how he studied the alignment of the Rams, and he saw that their condensed formation on the right-hand side, he knew that they would be going to a quick out. He saw it on film a bunch. So if he can use his mind and his awareness and his instincts and his eyes, he can still play zones, read the quarterback's intentions, and find a way to still create turnovers. So I wouldn't put him in situations where he's got to play man coverage or maybe he's got to have great foot speed. But if you just let him drop back and be a free safety, whether it's deep half or post safety, I think he can still create turnovers and be in the right spot. And that's going to help a defense kind of find themselves.
Sticking with Kevin Byard and the Bears defensive backs, that's pretty much the Bears' strength. They know how to draft a defensive back, Tyler. I don't know if you know
those
that.
Corners, man. Kyler Gordon is so underrated. People don't pay attention enough to slot corners. Like, everybody cares about the lockdown outside corner. Everybody plays nickel in the NFL now. You have to have a good slot corner that can play pass coverage and be physical. And I just love Kyler Gordon. So go ahead, but I just had to get that in there.
No,
He's one of my favorite slots.
Interesting side note. The Bears actually list their depth chart with Kyler Gordon as a starter at DB and not
Mhm.
three linebackers for the first time.
Yeah.
For the first time, they've got the slot corner in as the starter instead of their base,
Right. Hey, side note, the Titans listed their offense as 3 wide receiver and not 2 tight end. You're saved. Hallelujah.
Welcome to 2024.
Right, exactly.
Look, but where will Brian Callahan try to attack this team where you've mentioned the lack of coverage from the Titans linebackers? The Bears actually, now maybe you wouldn't say TJ Edwards was a great coverage linebacker, but they have decent coverage when you look at the fact that you have Tremaine Edmonds in the middle. The defensive line is a question because they only have one force multiplier, as we know, in Montez Sweat. How do you think Bill Callahan's going to attack this Bears defense with perhaps a lack of pressure up front, but the defensive backfield is a juggernaut?
I just want to say I love the term force multiplier. I think it's just a really good term to use and to explain player impact without using statistics. It's funny. We just, had the dance there in 3 wide receiver. They're going to throw. Titans need to run the ball. They actually need to have a Mike Vrabel game plan because to me, Chicago is going to be jumping, man. Caleb Williams, first game, home game, the city of Chicago, which is my favorite American city. Also, I got to say, I know I'm pulling at the heartstrings. I'm pandering to you guys heavy. I love Chicago, man. That was like my favorite vacation I ever took. But it's going to be loud in there. And the Titans are a new team with a lot of new faces and a lot of new people and a brand new system. The communication, like Calvin Ridley's not going to be able to just look in at Will Levis and they'll be like, oh, okay, we got outside leverage and a 2 high safety shell. We need to adjust the route to this. And they don't got to talk. They just know. They're going to have to talk that out. And it's going to be hard to do it in that environment. So how do you avoid those situations? You run the football and you stay in third and manageable. So you don't have to make these crazy adjustments. And I think that early on for offensive linemen, it's why people say, like, if you're going to draft an offensive lineman, get a good pass blocker because you could teach run blocking to anybody. You know what I mean? Pass blocking is the hard skill to find. So for me, make it easy on your young offensive line with J.C. Latham, a rookie left tackle. Peter Skoronski, good player, only in a second year. The right side of the offensive line has some young players still on their rookie contract who haven't proven to be, like, oh, that guy's a starter in the NFL. Like, I don't know. So don't ask those guys to go one-on-one with Montez Sweat or Javon Dexter or DeMarcus Walker, who has great inside-out versatility, as, I covered him in Tennessee. Don't ask them to do that all game. They have to run the football, play action off of that to give some shot opportunities to Will Levis. I think the Titans will develop into more of that quick timing passing as we go throughout the season. But week 1, it may not be all on the same page already. So run the dang ball. It's got to be an old school Titans plan for week 1 in that environment. So that's what I would focus. And you talk about the D line for the Bears. There are question marks there, right? You guys looking at good linebackers, good stuff in the secondary, but what's this D line really going to give us? So I don't want to let the Bears pin their ears back in third and long situations. And I want to help the offensive line do what they do more comfortably. So I'm focused on running the football. And for me, if I'm the Titans, I want to see a lot of pin pull. I want to see down blocks where you have guys out leverage and then get these athletic offensive linemen out to the perimeter and make these defensive backs tackle. They're good in coverage, but make them tackle. That's what I would try to do. Like Jalen Johnson, great in coverage, one of the best cornerbacks in the entire NFL. Does he want to tackle 10 times a game? I don't know. We're going to see. That's what I would do personally, is focus on the power runs and the gap runs with down blocks and then some pullers on the outside and see if these defensive backs want to tackle all game.
Talking about the pass game a little bit more, how do you think the Titans are going to deploy their new look wide receiver room? Obviously, DeAndre Hopkins was there, but 2 new faces in Calvin Ridley and Tyler Boyd, both kind of experienced playmakers. I thought Treylon Burks was going to be a star. I was pounding the table for him coming out of the draft. That didn't work out. But I guess how do you expect the Titans to use their new look wide receiver room with their 3 starting wide receivers?
I mean, what a disaster the AJ Brown trade was. You trade AJ Brown and you get Treylon Burks. I mean, listen, I was huffing the copium at the time. Oh, Burks will be good, this and that. But if you go back and look at his college tape, everything was quick screens, or, he catches a long vertical route over somebody he's way bigger and faster than. He was never a good route runner. Quite frankly, he's not a hard worker, in my opinion. Like, it's year 3, and they're like, he's in the best shape of his life. Well, they said that last year. So were you lying last year? His first practice ever for the Titans, he had to leave early and hit an inhaler because he couldn't breathe. Like, he's just not a guy who's had to work very hard throughout his life because he's always been bigger and faster than everybody else. But you guys know that everybody's bigger and faster at the NFL. This is the bigger, faster league where all those guys end up. And he's not a precise route runner. He has terrible body control and balance. When he goes up for these passes on the sideline, he does not know how to fall. And people think I'm crazy sometimes when I say this, but learning how to fall and not hurt yourself is a skill wide receivers in the NFL have because they have such supreme body control. I could barely use my left hand. Like, these guys can make one-handed catches with their, like, they absolutely control their body as they go to the ground. Burks doesn't have that. Even when he catches some of these long passes, he like fumbles and stumbles and can't catch his balance. I call him Bambi Burks because he's like a baby deer. He just like is almost too big for what his body thinks that he is. But as for the wide receivers that I actually do believe in, the Titans have slotted them so perfectly. DeAndre Hopkins as your physical X receiver on the line of scrimmage, dealing with press coverage. He may not create incredible separation, but he never has because he can win combat catches. He can win contested situations. And him and Levis have that chemistry where if nobody's open, just throw it to Hop. He may not catch it, but he's got a good chance to pull it down. And then Boyd is obviously the chain mover in the slot. I think he is the straw that stirs the drink for the Titans passing offense because Will Levis throwing it down the field all the time, you're going to hit some, but that's not going to help you sustain drive. So hitting those 5-6 yard little passes to Tyler Boyd in the slot, that is how the Titans keep the offense going. And then Calvin Ridley is the explosive play threat. Last year in Jacksonville, I don't know what they're doing. Look, I'm just a guy, okay? Doug Peterson won a Super Bowl as a head coach in the NFL. I do not know more about football than Doug Peterson, okay? Not a chance. But still, he was using Calvin Ridley as an X wide receiver on the line of scrimmage, taking press coverage. That's not what Calvin Ridley does best. He doesn't do well with press coverage because he's a skinny guy. You want to get him unleashed with his speed. So the Titans are moving him back to what he did in Atlanta, where he was the Z wide receiver off the line of scrimmage, coming in motion before the snap. And when you do that, you get him out of press situations. You get him on the run before the snap when he's one of the fastest wide receivers in the league. So I think everything is slotted much more perfectly for the Titans wide receivers than it was in previous years for the Titans because they didn't have the talent. And then even, like Ridley coming from Jacksonville, he's in a better role right now than he was in Jacksonville last year. And people talk bad about Calvin Ridley like last year wasn't good. He had over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, 75 catches. Like, if you're telling me that was his first year back from missing 2 years and now he's more comfortable with his football routine and in a more proper role in the offense, I think Calvin Ridley is in for a huge year.
I won't allow you to be the only one on this podcast that panders, Tyler. I personally was this close to going to TSU. I love Nashville.
Right.
I think the dorms were packed. And before they moved to Tennessee, my dad used to tell me about this kid at Alcorn named Fisher. I mean, not Fisher, named Steve McNair. I'm going to get into Fisher. But Jeff Fisher angered me, Guppy, the former Bear. They waited too long to start him, and Eddie George had started being beat up. But the Titans were one of my favorite teams of that era. Like, I love Tennessee. I love Nashville and the Titans. I used to, like, when you come into the city and you can see that whatever that highway is, and you can see down to the stadium. It's like this is going to be my new city. Right. Enough of you and the Pioneer. Something Alex hit on, and that's my great other half. And Alex, I want to ask you when he asked you about Kevin Byard, what about Nate Davis? This is an issue we have up here. Get on us about what happened when the Bears brought in Nate Davis, because it really hasn't come to fruition what they thought they were getting at right guard at this point.
Well, number one, he's just had a hard time staying healthy. And that's obviously going to hinder your development. And the old adage is your best ability is availability. So he needs to be out there, but he's a guy who I think just struggles in pass protection sometimes when you get against quicker rushers, because he's a big bodied guy. And I think he can move his feet when he's going forward, but he struggles a little bit going backwards. So for me, I really, that's one of my pinpoints. I think that Jeffrey Simmons is going to attack. Jeffrey Simmons went against him in practice for multiple years. And I just don't think Nate Davis is like the term jag, just another guy. Nate Davis is a jag guard in the NFL. You could probably flip him with like 20 other guards in the NFL who are at his same level and get similar production. I think Jeffrey Simmons is just going to attack him because Simmons has a combination of power and speed, and it's going to make Nate Davis have trouble figuring out exactly what to expect. I think he would have more success against T'Vondre Sweat, who I think Sweat's going to be a good player at this point based on what he's done in training camp, but he's not going to have the explosiveness that Jeffrey Simmons is going to have. So I would try to get Simmons lined up against Nate Davis one-on-one. Hopefully the center and the guard on the other side are double teaming T'Vondre Sweat. And if you can get Jeffrey Simmons one-on-one, get his hands in the chest of Nate Davis to create a little bit of space, just enough for Simmons to then go to his quickness and get around. I think, and that's why I keep saying they got to hem him in the pocket. The edge rushers are not the key to this win. The edge rushers just need to hold so that Williams can escape and let Simmons and Sweat on the interior and the linebackers blitzing, let those guys get to Caleb Williams. So it's truly going to have to be a team game here. And the edge rushers, Harold Landry, Arden Key, Jalen Harrell, they're going to have to sacrifice a little bit because I like the Bears tackles. I do. You know what I mean? I like Braxton Jones. Of course, the guy out of Tennessee, Darnell Wright, I liked him a ton. But I wouldn't want to attack there. I want to attack that interior trio of Nate Davis and Tevin Jenkins, and the center's name is blanking on me. But I keep wanting to say Cody Whitehair. Coleman Shelton. Like, we are attacking Coleman Shelton. I want to spread out. I want to slant to the outside with the interior defensive lineman and then bring those blitzes up the middle. We are attacking A-gaps all night long in the pass rush. That would be my plan. And, of course, that, does try to take advantage of Nate Davis.
You've talked about it a lot with the mush rush, with the run game, with everything. But just to put it all together, I just checked. At the time of recording, the Bears are 4.5-point favorites. So what is your game script for the Tennessee Titans to pull off the upset?
Well, I got to tell you, I think this is going to be a close game, and the Bears absolutely could win. Honestly, at the beginning of the week, I had the Bears winning the game. I did my season predictions where I went week by week, and I had the Bears winning 21-20. I think it was that I had the score. 4.5 is way too many points. That is, from a gambling perspective, I've heard a lot of people who aren't Titans fans be like, why is that line so high? Rookie quarterbacks are 0-14-1 in the last 20 years in their debut. And number one picks are 0-7 in a recent period. I know the numbers aren't exactly right there, but the point remains that rookie quarterbacks and number one overall picks tend to struggle in their first game. So I love the Titans plus 4.5 just from a betting standpoint alone, but I think it's pretty simple. You run the football with success, you hit play action shots off of that, which minimizes the home crowd and makes it easy on your young players. On defense, you keep Caleb Williams contained in the pocket, you get pressure through the A-gaps with blitzes and slants, and then someone is going to make a big mistake in the second half. One of these teams, because both these teams, I think, will be shaky. We're not going to see the best version of either of these teams this week. I have the Bears making the playoffs. So I think the Bears are going to be a good team. I just think it may take them a little bit of time. I know they have a pretty difficult end of the season stretch too. Crazy, 6 division games in the final 8 weeks, and then 2 really good teams in there. That's a tough ender. But I think the Bears could still make the playoffs because they have a lot of talent there. But I think one of these teams is going to make a huge mistake in the third quarter coming out of halftime, a turnover on special teams, on offense, one of the two. It's just going to be about which team doesn't make that big mistake that swings the game. And both teams are, still kind of fresh, at least the offense for the Bears, both on the defense. I think the Titans, though, with the pressure that they're going to put on Caleb Williams with their blitz packages, correct me if I'm wrong, but Matt Eberflus is not a big blitz guy. He doesn't bring a lot of blitzes. And I think the Titans are going to bring a lot of blitzes. So the pressure will be higher on Caleb Williams. And I think that leads to the Bears being the team that makes the simple mistake. So I actually ended up picking the Titans in this one 20-17. But I think it's going to be an incredibly close game. And if the Bears get that final red zone opportunity that they get if they get the touchdown instead of the field goal, they probably win 21-20 or, 24-20, something like that. But for right now, I'm going to go with the Titans 20-17.
Good luck this month. You have us with the Bears. You have the Jets, the Pack, and the Dolphins. On paper, it looks like it could be a tough month. You have been a great guest today. We really appreciate you joining us, and have a terrific football season, Tyler.
Yeah, absolutely. You guys too. Again, love the city of Chicago. I've always liked Caleb Williams. I was pounding the table for Caleb Williams 2 years ago. Like, we should tank for this guy. So I'm excited to see. I also, not a shameless plug here, but I also am the lead host for Locked On NFL. So I'll be talking Bears all year long as Caleb Williams. Inevitably, I picked Caleb Williams for Rookie of the Year this year. So a lot of Bears talk. I'm excited to watch Caleb Williams play, just not so much this weekend.
Tic Tac Titans, Locked On Titans. You just heard right there, Locked On NFL. You see this quality this man is giving us right here. We're not just saying it because he's here. Follow him and follow these shows. Tyler, we appreciate it, man. We'll talk to you down the line.
Yep. Thank you so much.
Congrats. You finished the video. If you want to build on that success, download the NBC Sports Chicago app. It's got highlights, exclusive insights, and push alerts tailored to you. Everything you need to be a real Chicago sports fan. Download it now.